Today on the show, we lower our fists and choose another path. The path of Wude and true Kung Fu mastery. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and universes of our favorite video games. I'm Connor.
And I am your humble student disciple, Bruce.
Are you ready to learn the way of the fist from two guys who never got beyond yellow belt in their lives?
Whoa, you got to yellow belt?
All the way to yellow, baby.
Oh, dude. I did not get past white. It was really hard, and I had to keep going, and then the free classes ran out, so I stopped.
Yeah, that's how they get you. And to be clear, yeah, I took karate like briefly in college, and also to be clear, yes, I know that the karate and kung fu are different. I'm not conflating the two.
I took taekwondo classes in first grade. Like,
nice. You got a way earlier start than I did. I started way late.
I don't think any of it stuck, but you know.
It's like riding a bike, you know. It's like doing a bicycle kick. You know,
I was just gonna say.
But no, like as much as we appreciate the disciplines of martial arts, the various martial arts that are out there, I think we'll probably just play it safe and just stick to the video game versions of martial arts. I'm way better at those, at least.
Yeah, I think so. For me too.
I'm excited to talk about a game that honestly it's been kind of under the radar since it came out earlier this year, and I'm really glad that we both had a chance to have some hands-on time with it. And
like this was on kind of my radar. SIFU is an amazing game. We actually bonded over it at a party at your place where you're just like, oh, I've been playing SIFU, and I was like, wait, is that the aging game? It was like, yeah, and then you showed me everything, and I think it was like the club scene, and I was just like hooked.
Right.
I actually know these guys. The studio Slow Clap did one game before this, I believe. It was called Absolver, and
I also played Absolver. Yeah.
Did you play it? I did not.
Yeah.
I never got around to playing it, but I saw a Let's Player that I love, Willie Wools, who was part of Super Best Friends, and it's a fighting game MMO, and it was so incredible and revolutionary. I was just like, these guys know what's up.
Yeah, Absolver was very inventive and had an interesting fighting system, and it was like kind of online adventure where you can fight other players, and they really took a lot of those innovations and a lot of that energy and brought it into SIFU, which was a little more focused, a little more polished, single player experience. But yeah, no, I got obsessed with SIFU earlier this year. I cornered you when we were hanging out once, like, dude, you have to play this. It's so cool. But no, I'm glad we both got a chance to have some hands-on time with it, and we're able to talk about some themes that, looking at a fighting game, you might not think like, oh, it has a story to tell or a lesson to teach, but SIFU really does. And a really unexpected treat of mine was, playing through SIFU and experiencing this very interesting philosophical theme to it. And dude, this would be awesome to talk about. But before we get super deep into that, a little bit of housekeeping I'll do really quick. Just want to let you all know we love to hear from our listeners. We always enjoy hearing from you. So feel free to email us anytime at podcast@loreparty.com with your thoughts, critiques, compliments, anything like episode ideas you'd like us to talk about later. We're open to that. And we also stream occasionally on Twitch, so be sure to follow us on twitch.tv/loreparty. And of course, you can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at @lore_party. So, SIFU, specifically what we wanted to talk about with SIFU. I mean, we could gush about the game in general all day, but I think in particular, there are two distinct endings to SIFU that you can kind of see depending on how you play the game. And I think they both have distinct lessons to teach us. So we want to talk about those endings, but we also want to explore the concept of Wude, which we'll get into in detail later. And how that concept is central to the teachings of Kung Fu and how that all ties into the gameplay experience of SIFU and really makes it special.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about it because it is more than just you being able to live out your most amazing John Wick fantasies and like be your own star and director and cinematographer of a Kung Fu movie. This does a beautiful job of both telling a story, having the player feel as engaged and autonomous as possible in almost every scene, and it has a lesson to teach about the philosophy behind the martial arts.
Absolutely, and we're going to dive into all of that, but first we'll take a really quick break to hear from our sponsors, so stick around and we'll be right back. When you start playing SIFU, the game opens on a dark and rainy night. The scene is set at this, secluded martial arts school, like a kind of like a dojo, but I think in Kung Fu it's called a wuguan or wuguan. Anyway, we open on the main villain, actually, a gentleman named Yang, and he attacks this martial arts school out of nowhere, and he just kind of breaks his way in, starts fighting his way through the students, and just taking down anyone who gets in his way.
But it's clear they know who he is.
Right. He shows up and they're all like, "What are you doing here?" So yeah, there's familiarity there. Yeah, so we don't get right away, what the scenario is, how he, why he's doing this, but we find out later on. But Yang is being assisted in this attack on this martial arts school by 4 mysterious accomplices, and we'll get to know them later as well. And so he fights his way through all the students, just taking them out barehanded, and he finally confronts and kills the SIFU of the Kung Fu school with his bare hands. And the SIFU's young child, who happens to be hiding nearby, witnesses the murder, and they are then discovered by Yang, who orders the child to be killed as well. Just cold-blooded. This is, take no prisoners approach. He's wiping out all witnesses, basically.
Right, but I do want to make it known, because I replayed it and rewatched the beginning scene, and before one of the assailants of the whole wuguan does slit the child's throat, you can see that some of them turn their head in either disgust or shame. Right. So it shows that there is also some I wouldn't say human decency, but there is a level that they're not reveling. They're not like, oh yeah, let me get some of that kid blood all over me.
Right. Yeah, they don't seem to be enjoying this. This isn't Yang is going scorched earth on this place, but he doesn't seem to be taking any cruel pleasure in it. This seems like, this is what we have to do. But yeah, so the child is murdered also, only to be miraculously revived by a mystical talisman left to them by their father. So the child survives and is able to go on. Now, really quick, just the game lets you choose between a female protagonist, male protagonist. The student, the child is kind of, you decide which one.
Yeah. And so with that, they wake up, and when they wake up, they realize what had happened. They realize that everything is gone. Their father is dead, and they are alive. And it is because of the secret talisman that is, either an heirloom or an artifact that is known in the wuguan. And they use this time, and they understand what they have to do, or what they believe that they have to do, and spend the next 8 years swearing a vengeance to kill the father's assailants, the people who tried to take their life. And they, in the kind of title sequence, kind of cool little shot of
opening
them,
credits.
Exactly. They're training, and they're going over how they fight in their head, and how they take down each of the people, which, I mean, who hasn't with someone who's an asshole in their life?
We've all been there.
And then I trip him, and then I stab him in his heart.
Yeah, the student is just honing their body into a weapon, just a single-minded purpose with this, just every day, constantly training.
And on top of that, they also create this sort of that stereotypical strings drawn to pictures all together evidence board trying to take down this huge, giant, like, organization, this dark, conglomerate of, seedy underbelly of the city, where they kind of break down each of the people who were there that night that caused such trauma in their life. And they're like formulating a plan to just go one by one and kill them, and obviously reach Yang, who was the mastermind at the top.
Yeah, and this all takes place after that 8 years, that whole montage of the student growing up and training and making this master plan.
Now 20 years old.
Now, yes, so the student is now about 20 years old, young adult, with just one clear goal: kill Yang and his 4 accomplices, all 5 of them. They got to go. And that's when the game kind of begins in earnest. That's when the main game takes place. And the whole game, this main part of it at least, it all takes place over basically like a 24-hour time period. It's all essentially one day. And in this 24-hour mission, you're just tracking down and taking vengeance on all 5 of your targets. But one of the main conceits of the game is that each time your character is defeated in combat, you're resurrected by the talisman each time, kind of like how your life was saved at the very beginning. However, there's a cost. There's a price to using the talisman, and that is each time you're revived by it, you also age instantly. Like you age a couple years. Or how many years you age each time you're revived kind of depends on how many times you're killed. It's a weird game mechanic, the death counter, but the long story short of it is using the talisman to come back to life shortens your life. It's a catch-22. But that does demonstrate a central theme of SIFU, which is that this mission of vengeance is so extremely personal that it transcends death itself.
Yeah, you just keep going. Like, no matter how many times you were like brought down, you understand that this is it. You don't have a plan after this.
Right. There is no life outside of this mission. And so even killing you isn't enough to stop you. It's crazy.
Yeah. And through usually what is your first run, the student goes through and just absolutely bodies everyone. Every boss fight, it is like such a satisfying feeling where you're just like hitting them with their own weapons, or like flipping around and like stabbing them in the like right in front of their face. And you can see that there is pain behind it, but as you are also going through this entire, gauntlet with them, you start to almost feel the same way as the student. You are beaten again and again, and you have to keep getting up, and your frustration builds and your anger builds, and you want to just you want to see them die too at a certain point. Yeah. You want to like kill them.
Yeah.
And at the end, the student, it has succeeded in killing Yang and his minions, but instead of relief, they only feel emptiness and regret. Yeah. Especially after learning that like Yang's motivation for doing this, killing his dad and SIFU, the SIFU who was also like a father to Yang.
Right.
Killing is like someone who was also like a younger sibling to Yang, and stealing the talismans, working with the other people. It was all because of this falling out that he had with the father and / SIFU to try and save his family, wanting to use the talisman and, the power from these artifacts to get some semblance of getting his family back. And he was so distraught after that.
Yeah, we find out that Yang wanted to use the talisman to save the lives of his family. I think either like a wife and child or just nondescript loved ones that Yang wanted to save from an unknown, demise. And SIFU, the player character's father, said, "No, Yang, you are unworthy to be a guardian of the artifacts." So there was, we find out that there was like this really understandable personal motivation for Yang to steal the talisman, and we were at this moment where Yang is humanized, and as the player, as the student, killing Yang brought you nothing. You're right back where you started. Basically, you're all alone. You have nothing left. So, as we mentioned earlier, the mission of vengeance is all consuming. Your character has no life outside of it. So now that it's over, it's kind of like, now what?
I also want to bring it back to what I mentioned before, in which some of the people looked away as, one of the villains slit the student's throat when they were a child.
Yeah, right.
And it again shows that there's a conscience in these people. There is at least a line that they don't really feel comfortable crossing, but they believe that this is all for what they try to explain in some of the different boss fights as the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And as they try to, the student says, was it the greater good to kill my dad and all the people in there and slit a child's throat? Yeah. And they are still unwavering in that. And they say, yeah, it is, because more people are alive now because of the network that we have together. Right. But you still go ahead at it. And again, as you said, it's very, it leaves you aimless. It's a bittersweet ending. It's what kind of victory?
It's hollow.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no contentment or enlightenment at the end of that road. It's just empty. But yeah, like you said, that's the main ending that most players see the first time they complete SIFU. That's kind of the easy way out, I guess. But no, yeah, like you said, when you fight these bosses, like it gets frustrating, and it's very satisfying to take their lives. It's totally understandable. But what some people didn't know at first, or what people found out through playing SIFU, is that there's actually a hidden alternate ending that can only be unlocked when certain conditions are met. It's kind of like almost like a hard mode, or just a path B. And the way you do this is in each boss fight, the player is able to either empty the enemy's health bar, which kills them, or break their defense meter or their structure meter. And if you do that twice in a row without emptying their health bar, without finishing them off with like your finishing move or whatever, you get the option to defeat the boss while sparing their life. So it's kind of like a hidden option that you have to really go out of your way to see it become available.
Yeah, they don't tell you this. There is nothing in the game that, like, there's not like a little square text box at the bottom saying, spare your enemies to gain Wude. Like, nothing like that.
No tutorial for it, no hints. Yeah, you have to really go out of your way to discover this option. And if you manage to do that against every boss, including Yang, the player is shown a very different conclusion. Honestly, it was really worth it and like really interesting to see this hidden ending, because it tells such a different story. So if you're pursuing the alternate ending and you've spared every other boss and then you get to Yang, the fight plays out, in an interesting way, because in this fight, you try to spare Yang, and what happens is he takes your talisman from you and he's about to land the killer blow on you, and the player, your character, sees it coming, like knows what's about to happen, but just kind of lets himself be struck down.
Yeah.
Like you let Yang land this punch on you, which is interesting.
Yeah, and at that moment, like, instead of what usually happens before, where you're kind of like remembering like this falling out between Yang and your father, the SIFU, you are kind of out of the situation where now Yang remembers his dying loved ones. He remembers the graves of his wife and child, and he remembers the fight that he had. And then he kind of gets blasted back to the present, and he just sees the student, us, like, get up, mortally wounded, shaken, like legs spaghetti, arm spaghetti, mom spaghetti, and everything spaghetti, and they're ready to fucking still keep going.
Right. You're basically dying from that blow that Yang landed to your chest earlier. Like,
but you ain't hear no bell. Like,
right. Like, your heart is shutting down, but you're using the last of your strength to finish the fight.
Exactly.
Which is hardcore. It's awesome.
And and sorry, we had a little conversation before this, because I was just like, that's what happened? I just thought, like, you main charactered your way up. But I like that. And it actually explains that while you're fighting in this like next phase of the fight, there is no health bar, because your health is gone. You're on your way out. And that is very, like, that's a cool, like, aha moment that I just had, where like you're here until it ends, and it's just all about structure and keeping that up. And then they finally gain the upper hand, but once again, it doesn't just like go through the final blow. They just, like, you think it does, and then it like shows that like you spared them, and you hear your father's voice say, "This is Wude," and like you just collapse. You fall to your
Yeah.
knees and you fall down. Yang is like visibly shooken, but
Yeah.
like he's just as confused as the player might be, of just like, what the fuck? That's the ending?
When your mortal enemy has you at their mercy and is about to stop your heart with a killer punch, just like you gave them, but at the last second he pulls that punch and doesn't hit you. I mean, it's natural to be pretty confused. So, like the student has Yang on the ropes and is about to. It was going to be a mutual killing, basically. Like, I kill you, I die in the effort. Like we die together, but at the last second, you spare Yang and you die instead.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But it doesn't quite end there, does it?
No. After the credits scene, you wake up and you are like in this weird mountain nirvana heaven place, and like you're clearly not anywhere where you were before, and you like get up and you walk through like this weird mountain pass, and you get to the peak and you see this beautiful like sunrise and the clouds, and like a fucking dragon like flying and roaring in the sky. And it's a very strange, like non-traditional kind of ending. And then, after that, you gotta wait for the after credits scene, where the student is then, what was it? They were taken in by Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury for the Avengers.
No. You're thinking of something else.
No, they are basically, I guess, like it's a time jump, and like they're now the SIFU, and they're in the old Wuguan, implying that they.
There's a new student can be seen training in the Wuguan now.
Exactly.
And the player character is kind of can be seen kind of off screen, but it's heavily implied that's the player character because of the beads on the arm and the clothes and all that. So yeah, we get the impression that you as the student, the player character, you've been spared, possibly by Yang, as thanks for sparing him, and you've gone on to train a new student, like kind of carry on the teachings.
I didn't think that.
Oh, really?
No, I thought, because to me it felt like, okay, Yang killed a student, and what we saw at the end with like the student like waking up, I thought that was like heaven or like the afterlife, and then like, okay, you died, and that was the good part of dying. And what we see in the time skip is actually Yang, like he gives everything up. Like your death absolutely like shook him, because one, he had to do it like 3 fucking times at this point. And not including the times where you probably died in the game fight. And he feels like absolutely distraught. He sees like the kind of monster he's become. He's reminded of his family and the other family that he like completely destroyed. And he instead dedicates his life to, bringing that tradition back and, becoming a guardian for these artifacts, knowing that, the deeds have been done, and he forgives himself and he forgives what has happened, as long as he can be able to try and make it right.
That is a valid interpretation. I can see why you'd think that. But the mountainside, that's just where you were when you fought Yang, because Yang's temple, his compound, is on a mountain. So you could easily have just woken up outside of his hideout.
Did Yang just fucking dump our corpse out in the rocky fields?
Possibly. Well, no. So when you spare him and you die anyway, the mountainside could be after he has had a change of heart and used the talisman to bring you back.
Oh.
And the after credit scene in the Wuguan, where you see a character sitting in a chair and a younger student is training nearby, you see the beads on the right arm of the character in the chair. Those are the same beads that the player character wears throughout the game.
I know. I thought that was like Yang. I thought Yang took them like a fucking weirdo.
That's possible, but you're also wearing the same clothes that the player wears. So it's kind of open to interpretation, but I feel like the heavy implication is that, you've been revived by Yang as thanks for sparing him. And there's forgiveness between the two of you, and he lets you go on training the next generation, because Yang's motivation was to end your father's legacy by killing him and killing you and just wiping out your entire martial arts school. But if you spare his life, he has a change of heart, decides to spare you in return, that's when you wake up on the mountain, and that's when you go back and train the next generation in your Wuguan. That's how I see it.
I mean, you were right about the death thing, so I mean, I'm gonna take yours more. Don't worry.
I appreciate that, but I like where your head's at, though. I think that both interpretations of that. The ending is unclear for a reason. I think maybe Slow Clap wants us to wonder kind of which way it goes, but I think no matter which way you interpret the ending, you're kind of left with the impression that this is the true ending of the game.
Yes.
This is what you're meant to see at the end of the SIFU experience. The kind of main ending, or the easy ending, or the bad ending, whichever you want to call it, of the student killing Yang and then feeling empty, hollow, and alone at the end is kind of the bad ending. It's like that leaves you with nothing. That you have nothing to take away from that. Mm-hmm. But at the end of this path to the game, it's a lot more fulfilling. And we as the player are shown, not just told, but shown that a vengeance-fueled bloodthirst, it doesn't give you the kind of serenity and sense of purpose that comes with defeating your foes with compassion.
Yeah.
We're going to break that down a little bit further pretty soon, but first we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
And we're back. So let's dig into this, martial arts philosophy of Wude and really break it down. The word Wude in Chinese essentially translates to martial morality, referring to the philosophy of inflicting violence under an ethical framework. It's right. You don't just punch an innocent person or a baby.
Especially not babies.
Yeah, and you use it in a better context of for a means for a specific purpose, and that purpose having to be greatly aligned with morality, with peacefulness, self-defense. Kung Fu is a practice that not only works in self-defense, but also the morality of the mind. It teaches you to use your body, mind, and spirit. And I guess that's kind of the spirit is morality of good right. deeds and, making those efforts while you are on this mortal plane. And human life is greatly valued under this ethical framework.
Right. Wude really, if you apply it in practical terms, it really comes down to, knowing how to hurt another person and knowing how to defend yourself with your bare hands. That's not as important as the ways in which you use it. Or how you use this knowledge and this technique reflects on you as a person. It reflects on your character when you use it for immoral reasons. And, we kind of have this explained to us in really quick snippets from SIFU, the main character's father.
Mm-hmm.
He can be heard referring to Wude at the end of the bad ending. When you kill Yang and take your revenge, you kind of hear your father's voice in your head, and he says, "He who has Kung Fu and Wude makes the other know he can break him. His hands go out like lightning, and the other doesn't want to fight anymore." It's kind of a hint toward the player of how to achieve the true ending. I really appreciated this extra layer to this game when I beat Yang for the first time. Like you explained, Bruce. When you beat these bosses, you want to dance for joy because they're usually so goddamn hard.
You want to dance on their graves.
When I fought Yang for the first time, I felt like I was beating my head against a brick wall. It was ridiculous how hard he is to fight, and it's one of the most complex and intricate boss fights I've ever experienced in any game I've ever played. And yeah, when I finally killed Yang and got the, I guess, quote unquote bad ending, I was like, "Fuck you, motherfucker. Yeah, you get what you deserve." I was like,
you shouldn't die.
Yeah. I
was on it, Yang.
I was so happy. But then, yeah, you see that ending. It's like, you kind of hear, your father's force ghost or whatever kind of explain
that's it. That's totally it.
When you take a life with Kung Fu, you've kind of missed the point of the teachings of Wude, which is when you know martial arts and you know how to defend yourself and you know how to beat another person in combat, that is a responsibility. That's not just a skill you have. That's a moral responsibility you have to protect people, including yourself. And so by practicing it morally, you demonstrate your skill to your opponent. You make it clear to them what you're capable of. that line, your hands go out like lightning and the other doesn't want to fight anymore. By taking the fight out of your opponent without taking their life, you have demonstrated actual mastery of the art. You've demonstrated morality of mind, morality of deeds, and that is Wude. And that fucking blew my mind.
That's
the first time
It's so amazing because this is one of the best games I would ever say in executing everything with the player. Nothing is happening at the player. You are the only person you truly can blame for failing, for succeeding, for making the right choices, for making the wrong choices. And it won't tell you what was right or wrong. It doesn't say with like a blaring screen and text flashing, oh, you fucked up, oh, you're done. No, it is, you can keep going, you can give up, you can kill them, you can spare them. You have to find that out. It's all on the player's agency. And I love that. It tells a story. It tells this philosophy all while you are doing it. There's dialogue that like doesn't directly, define Wude, but it demonstrates it, and you yourself take part in this demonstration, whether you know it or not.
Wow, I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Like everything is placed on the player as the main driver of what lessons you learn and what outcome the student character has. It's all on you. And like we explained earlier, this hidden / good ending, quote unquote, it's hidden. Like hidden is not just a buzzword we're using. It really is like we said, you have to go out of your way for it, and it's not spelled out for you by sparing the bosses. So yeah, it's all on you, and how you fight your way through SIFU and how you practice this martial art is reflected in the game itself. It's all so tied together. I love it. Thematically consistent. It's so cool.
Exactly. And by fighting the bosses again, I might be wrong about this. I kind of like the Groundhog's Day aspect of it, where when you choose to give up, I feel like that's still in canon. And that's still kind of happening where you have, up until the last second of the game, you have all the knowledge that of what has happened before. And being able to get these, evidence pieces beforehand means that and it sticks with you even after you die or you give up or you leave somewhere, and that you replay stuff means I feel that the player, the student, kind of has been in this fight before. This is possibly, in universe has taken 24 hours, but the player and the student have gone through it as long as you have, going over and over and over again. And again, you have to find out how you can spare them. I sometimes got frustrated because I would beat the bosses too hard in the first phase, and I'm just like, I'm gonna kill this dude if I keep doing this. It was at a point where you knew how to fight this person, you knew what their tell was, and you could easily fucking kill them, but you chose not to because you wanted to be able to spare them. And whether or not that was for a selfish reason of getting more content, or it was because you didn't believe that that was the right thing to do, you did it. And when you do, and it truly is not just slamming the knife down into the ground next to their head and walking away, you truly just spare them. The feeling that you get of just putting the weapon down or taking it from them and either extending a hand to help them up. It's more than just sparing, in my opinion. It's more of sparing them and then offering peace to them. And when you do, you get these little talismans that unlock that ending. When you get to Yang's healing compound, before you just get up to him, there will be some tables for each of the different talismans. And if you got them, they would light up and show you that it happened. And if you don't do it the first time, and if you haven't spared anyone, nothing will happen. You're not going to see anything.
So yeah, there's that. The game will tell you. There's that visual tell, and that it'll explain to you. You've taken the right path so far. All 4 of these talismans are here. You've spared life 4 times now. If you do it one more time with Yang, you'll reach the end of the road with purpose and morality. And so yeah, I actually like that idea too. I'd never thought. That's another thing I never thought of is this idea of SIFU as almost like a cosmic cycle of time where, you're struggling uphill with this mission of vengeance and gradually learning the lesson that it's better to diffuse the conflict than to just end it violently and end it with killing. So, like you said, you can just keep doing this over and over and over again, reliving this day countless times, dying, reviving, trying again, and gradually learning that lesson. There's a better way, the way of mercy, the way of peace. I like that idea.
Yeah.
That is essentially our interpretation of how Wude kind of is incorporated into the game as a philosophical concept. And again, what's so interesting about it is that it's never spelled out for the player. The player has to just sort of come across that knowledge on their own throughout the game. And by, ending the fight without killing Yang, that is how you've really demonstrated true mastery of not just the game mechanics of, because it takes skill to defeat the bosses without killing them. It's definitely easier to finish them off, fatally. But, that is how you as the player and your player character demonstrates mastery and understanding of what Wude is all about.
Yeah. I mean, that was the best thing. I don't know about you, but after, I think it was probably Sean who gave me the most trouble the first time around. And
Sean was tough, yeah.
Wanted to literally throttle this man. I wanted to humiliate him. At the end, I wanted to pants him and then kill him. I wanted to do some terrible things to him because he was.
I don't want to hurt him. I want to embarrass him.
And then I had to go back and I had to do I wanted to do the Wude. And as you go through this, and as some of these bosses are, it is a slog. It is it is a challenge, not frustratingly bad. It was less frustrating than me trying to figure out how to kill them the first way around. It demanded me to be cognizant of their health, of their structure, to make sure that they didn't lose their health too fast. It made me need to figure out how to make sure that I didn't lose too many lives or none of this would be worth it. It demanded me having the most amount of self-control and patience, virtues that Wude teaches. It teaches you to be in that mindset. I don't know about you, but when I was trying to do this sparing thing, I was less upset and angry and wanting to pace the floor in front of my TV, being Sean's fucking bullshit. He does that fucking low sweep shit with his awful dildo staff. I don't give a shit. Fuck him. I hate him. But then afterwards, I was just come on, Sean, buddy. You haven't hit me once. I need to knock you down. You got to stop doing this.
Work with me here, buddy. Yeah, come on. No, that is so true. That is big. I love that. No, it is so awesome how kind of making yourself go through the game differently. Like you said, teaches self-control, teaches patience, and it teaches Wude. It teaches you that kind of long-term, wiser approach. It's true mastery. Taking the time and care to defeat your enemies non-lethally is harder. It's more difficult. But that's because taking the easy way out is not what Wude is all about. When you do the hard thing, the right thing, that shows understanding, that shows wisdom, that shows that you understand Wude. It's awesome. You could argue that the game is attempting to show the player that the world is a better place when forgiveness is practiced more often than vengeance. We obviously vengeance has its place. It's understandable. It's an understandable motivation, but I think you do learn the lesson in this game, and you don't just learn it by being told. Like we said, it's so big and so important that the game shows you and lets you experience it rather than just showing it to you. That vengeance is hollow. It brings you nothing but just blood on your hands, and it's so enlightening and fulfilling to go through the game trying to practice aggressive forgiveness. Come here, let me forgive the shit out of you.
I have to forgive you with my fists. It's almost like a test, and like it's like not even a test. It's like a crash course and then a pop quiz at the end, where you're just like, all right, here's the scenario. Your old, your father's old student comes back with a bunch of people, kills him, your whole family, your Wuguan, and they slit your throat and your back. You want to get vengeance. What do you do? And it's just, and you go through it all, and it again, it's that player character agency where you feel what they feel. It is the closest it can be towards like actually being in their shoes, and it brings you to learn this so much more like firsthand. Like I felt like I was living a different life in that game because I was this person. There was no other thing. You didn't have like, bills to pay or rent or anything. It was just, get to the next person, get the least amount of damage, do the least harm, and get to that end. And it was so liberating to be able to get there. But then you had to still think, and you still had to do all of that. And in the game, I love the adage of making those choices on top of there are certain interactions with people where you have an option to either be vengeful, angry, wanting to hurt someone, or you can choose to be, peaceful, nice, accommodating, and like a middle one that is just incredibly neutral. And that is adding to the overall dynamics and mechanics of this game, where it gives you these choices. Sometimes they are clear, sometimes they are not, but they are still yours to make. And some of them make these huge different changes and consequences, and others are for flavor's sake, and it kind of follows how you are feeling in that moment.
Right. It is one of the coolest and most inventive ways I've ever seen a video game teach a moral lesson. I think a lot of the time when you have a game with kind of a morality system where there's like a black and white choice to make every now and then, or in some games it's a red and blue choice to make, whatever it is, you're usually just given an A or B, and usually it's like a pretty obvious, like this is the evil answer and this is the good answer. Like I've seen games make pretty good gray area decisions here and there, but I've never seen a game quite like this just make you learn the lesson firsthand, like over the course of the entire game. The lesson of true discipline is informed by mercy. Like mercy and discipline are not mutually exclusive. Like you can have justice, you can have defense and, sturdiness and, protection and, bringing evil to justice without giving into vengeance. And, mercy is not like exclusive to that. It's such an interesting lesson to teach, and in such a cool way. So I want to ask, as we wrap up here with our final thoughts, I want to ask, what do you as the player take away from this alternate ending and its interpretation of the concept of Wude? I know we've covered a lot of ground now, but just, Bruce, bring it home for me. What do you think of, like, because for me, obviously, I've never heard of Wude before playing this game. Like, what did you think? What was your takeaway after learning about it and seeing how it was implemented in this game?
So for this, I kept thinking about, is the world going to be better off in either of those endings? It was something that I was thinking of for such a long time after I completely finished SIFU. Because, Yang could have had the greatest of intentions, but he still had this network where they were controlling the whole city, from, the drug deals and, martial arts cults to, the funding of art and philanthropy and, healing people. Like, is that a wash? Is that not making anything better or worse? Or is it, the fact that, that power should just be kept out of the reach of people, because as soon as either they die or they retire, they're going to give it to someone else who clearly doesn't know what to do with it, or, the responsibility behind it, and would cause even more damage and even more, horrible shit. And then the other part is, if you let them live, if you let them have that power Nothing has been taken. Nothing has been gotten rid of. There are two quotes that kind of came to me that I really, really felt kind of put this into perspective with just a lot of different things that are happening in my life and in my world recently. So the first quote, nonviolent protest can only truly be effective if your enemy has a conscience. And them like saying that America does not have a conscience and that's why it does not work. And it was, to me, I kept thinking of like this like group of individuals with Yang did this. I don't know. I think Sean maybe was the only one who actually had no conscience. But
Right.
everyone else like felt that this was, for the greater good, especially like Yang, I think looked at this as somewhat selfishness of like, having another chance at redemption. But either way, this was kind of and again, I have to keep bringing it back to, I know it's the bar here, but them looking away from seeing the player get killed imply that they had like some conscience, that they knew that what they were doing in this very moment in a vacuum was wrong. And because of that, they have a conscience, and therefore this works on them. And if they were spared, if they were shown, mercy, that this is what they would finally come to terms with and saying, okay, I think I fucked up.
Yeah.
Another quote that really made me kind of think about this was, I don't know if you've heard this one before, but it was, you can't truly call yourself peaceful unless you are capable of great violence. If you are not capable of violence, you are not peaceful. You are harmless. And it makes me feel like that is one of the greatest things that Wude teaches. And it is not turn the other cheek, let's just, go home, let them have their way. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to my fucking senator.
Right.
It's not any of that shit. It is the fact that you show them mercy after you beat the ever-loving shit out of them, which is
absolutely.
I think that is so like the quote that you had of like the main character's father. He who has kung fu and Wude makes the other known. He can break him. His hands go out like lightning, and the other doesn't want to fight anymore. I think it sometimes is lost on, peacefulness and, having peace and mercy, that it must not at all be taken with any form of violence. But that is not what Kung Fu teaches. It is about self-defense. It is about, bringing this person up to your level, beat them down and say, you ain't got shit. You ain't shit. I could fucking kill you, but I'm not. Think about yourself, collect yourself, and get back to me. And if we have another problem, I'm just going to beat your ass again. And it's this sort of mental game that Wude teaches as well to people who do not have Wude in their hearts, in which it clearly encourages being able to match this person in strength, not to, do the unthinkable. The only line that is drawn is murder. Everything else is on the table. You can put them in a hospital. You can beat the fuck out of them, but it truly continues a cycle of death and vengeance if you do that one thing, which is murder. And I really like the idea that, you do want to avoid making that one horrible deed from like happening, but it's not going to happen by doing nothing. It's not going to happen by, appealing to someone's compassion. You have to make that last effort of literally kicking the fucking shit out of them and like letting them know that their pride and their ego is nothing.
Yeah. If you can't talk the fight out of them, you'll have to beat the fight out of them.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean you have to take their life in the process.
Right.
But that's huge. I really, really love what you said earlier about being peaceful doesn't mean being harmless. I think that's huge. I really enjoyed a lot of the ways that Wude was kind of woven into the story of SIFU. And, you know, something I think about a lot is if a character tries to kill me, that reflects on them. But if I kill them when they're not a threat to me, that reflects on me. You know, like by ending a fight and making someone not a threat anymore, you know, you've demonstrated your ability. You know, you've made it clear, like, I can take your life if I want to, but I'm going to choose not to. That's what it's all about with Wude. It's, you know, it's that, like I said, it's that responsibility. It's not just a skill you have. It's a burden. It's a responsibility you have to defend yourself, defend others, defend life, and not take it lightly, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said, it was one of the most interesting ways I've ever seen that philosophy told or explained in a game.
Well, that about wraps it up. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at lore_party. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.